So welcome to this edition of the podcast with REAS Group. Today I have a special guest with me, Lakeisha. And Lakeisha is here to tell us all about her career and where it started all from and what she's up to right now. She's also the head of Girls in Science, which is a wonderful program targeting specifically women who would like to find out more and learn more about a lot of the STEM subjects, and also to encourage people to start developing themselves and finding jobs in this particular area. So welcome to the podcast today, Lakeisha.
Thank you very much, Rob. Very excited to be here. Thank you.
I was quite careful because then I couldn't remember your surname, so I'm so sorry.
No, you know what? That's fine. So
because I know you've got a double-barreled one, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's a tricky one. So obviously, first name's Lakeisha. My second name is Jean.
All right.
But I have a bit of like French in my background, so it's actually Jean. But sometimes it depends. You know, what mood I'm in.
Okay.
But let's go with Jean. It's a lot more simple, yeah.
That's a lovely name, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's an unusual one because, I think the last time I heard the name Jean was, I think, watching something like X-Men or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Some people sometimes think it's my first name, so that happens. But yeah, you just roll with it.
Cool. So, French background, right? So
yes, on my dad's side.
On your dad's side. Okay, brilliant. I take it your dad was originally from France then?
Yeah, so my mum is 100% Zambian. My dad is from Seychelles. So that's one of the islands in the Indian Ocean that has a really wide mix of people. So everyone there has French, Asian, and African descent. Mm-hmm. But it's a real melting pot. But yeah, that's where all the
all the other
bits come from.
Brilliant. I mean, my background's kind of similar-ish in a way because, I'm actually from Guyana in South America. Mm-hmm. It's a country in South America, but it's actually a Caribbean country. I suppose, you want a better word, people call themselves West Indians as well. And of course, that's an entire melting pot in its own right.
100%.
And my mum was an indigenous woman mixed with a whole bunch of other things, and my dad was South Korean.
So, nice. Yeah, that's a cool mix.
Like, that's Guyana and that's South Korea when you think about the world, and to kind of end up there, it's...
I've never heard of that mix before. That's really... I didn't know that. Fun fact, Monday.
Yeah, that is a crazy mix.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your background and your upbringing and so on. So, you were born, and what happened then?
Yeah. I'm pretty boring. I was born in Milton Keynes.
Uh-huh.
But I grew up here. I didn't go to school in Milton Keynes, though. So I was always sort of on the outskirts villages. Mm-hmm. I went to Winslow, I was in Swanbourne for a little bit, and then for secondary school I was in Buckingham, the Latin, and then decided to go up north and just have a change of scenery.
All right.
So I was in Yorkshire for all of my secondary school education. But raised as an only child and very close to my family. Mm-hmm. Just a nice, moderately calm childhood.
Yeah. So that must have been quite a thing to be living in Milton Keynes and then all of a sudden ending up in Yorkshire.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. What was your experience like there?
Yeah, so obviously everything in Milton Keynes is new. I really enjoyed my childhood here. It was very close to London, so I used to do quite a bit of film work and stuff, and it was really good. We found the commute really easy. Mm-hmm. But then going up into Hull and York, which is where I studied for different parts of my postgrad and undergrad degree, where every building is like named after a famous person from 300 years ago.
Yeah.
It was a big difference. I definitely saw some things up there that I loved. I think they had a real deep sense of culture and community, which is why it was so easy to start Girls in Science while I was up north. Because immediately when you got there, you were aware of the tech communities. The university there was really helpful in pointing us in the right directions. And I loved that. And that's when I came back to Milton Keynes for work. I decided that I wanted to do something like that here. But I didn't really know what the landscaping was of everything. And that's when I started kind of like understanding what tech groups were already here. So getting in contact with what the council was already doing, And a lot of the tech groups have evolved over the past 4 or 5 years since I've been back.
Right.
I'm just getting stuck in, really. But
So remind me, what did you study at university?
yeah, so I did. So my first degree was in biomedical sciences.
Right.
And then I wanted to do medicine originally.
Yeah.
And about year 2 into my first degree, I decided against it for various reasons. But I really had a deep sense of kind of pulling into like public policy and understanding how overall lifestyle can contribute to health, and a more kind of like government side of things, so what the government could do with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I went into public health. So I did an MPH in public health, heavily research, masters up in York, worked with some really fantastic teams up there. So we're studying a lot about diabetes and longevity and how where you live and parts of your sort of lifestyle habits can affect how long you live, basically.
Right, right.
But on a more kind of scientific, qualitative level. And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then I decided to stop studying and come back down and actually sort of get my head stuck in work.
All right, okay. So I guess why did you want to go down that particular route of like medical, what was the thing that initially drove you there?
Yeah, I don't even remember what the decision-making process was. I just remember being like age 5 or 6 and saying I wanted to be a doctor. I wasn't even sure why.
Anybody in your background who've got medical?
All of my mum's all of that family, the level above me, were like air hostesses and pilots. So we weren't really in the medical field. A lot of my cousins are pharmacists and doctors and stuff. So I don't really know what made us all switch. But yeah, a lot of us are scientists. Actually, I have a cousin in America that worked on the AstraZeneca vaccine, and some doctors in New York, some really incredible people.
Mm-hmm.
But it just felt right to me at the time.
Yeah.
I'm glad that was my focus, because it's so hard to get into medical school. So it just made me work incredibly hard all throughout secondary school. So I'm glad that was my goal, even though there was a different plan.
So I'm just trying to unpick that a little bit.
Yeah.
It was something that was more kind of like a quick decision then, or was it something that you wanted to help people, or like you saw someone was ill and you wanted to help them, or nothing? It was just kind of like.
I just felt like doctors had a real purpose in their lives. I felt like there was a good sense of career progression. You understood what you were doing from year 1 to year 2 when you were registering to become a registrar, and the process was very well thought out. And I'm a very sort of logical thinking person. If I do this, then this should happen, and if I do this, then that should happen. And medicine made sense to me in that way. It's not like the career I have now where I don't know what I'm doing in the next 5 years. And that's required me to kind of let go a little bit and just go along with the flow, which isn't really in my personality too much.
Right. So yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute, actually, because that's quite interesting. Like you said, becoming a doctor is quite a defined thing. Like you study for a certain number of years, you do the work experience stuff, and then afterwards you're one. Right?
Exactly.
Okay. So yeah. So you're in Hull, and you're up north now, and you've studied this new particular area that you've gone into. What then pulled you back into Milton Keynes?
A number of things. I remember one of our last lectures in York, so that was during my master's, and they just said, they were talking about the economy, and they said how basically if you're in the UK, we're very lucky to be in a national area where we have one of the capitals of finance and health and fashion and everything in the world, and that's London. And his whole space was, if you want to be at the heart or at the centre of things, get as close to London as you possibly can.
Right.
And that just stuck with me. And it was at that point where I was in this sort of, the graduate scheme process, where it's a couple months long of deciding where you're going to go. I'd applied to the National Graduate Programme for the government, and I was deciding where I wanted to be. So I think I had London as an option, Cambridge, Wolverhampton was one of the ones I was looking at as well. And then there was Milton Keynes. And I just really felt like in Milton Keynes, if I came back, I could hit the ground running. I knew what the landscaping was, I knew what the people were like, I knew what the culture was. I grew up here. And I'm not one of those Keynesians that are just running to get out. That's not me. I genuinely love where I live. And I wanted a reason to come back. My family was down here. And I just felt like I had a bit of a community here. So that was what kind of pulled me back almost to my roots in that sense.
Right.
But I just thought it looked like Milton Keynes was starting to do some exciting things, although I didn't know exactly what it was at the time. And then, of course, I'm a Gen Z, so I was thinking of like house prices and how can I save up the most as soon as I can and that kind of thing. So that was at the back of my mind as well.
So you've got all of these things which are happening around like the periphery, which is like you said, being a Gen Z, having like socio-economic stuff going on around you and kind of thinking, well, better go where, I suppose, be close to the action, which is where everything's kind of happening around like MK and London. And then what kind of led you, when you came back, tell me, what was the first thing that you did after you'd finished your course and you came back? Where did you work?
So my first role, 2 weeks out of my master's, was as a sort of first year graduate on the National Graduate Scheme. So I was working in Milton Keynes. That was the first week that I met Sophie Lloyd, who who's now the head of economic development at the council. And it was a couple of us on this graduate scheme. I was only one in my year, but they'd done some sort of years before. So it was a group of us young people navigating the council, which isn't stereotypically super young. But we kind of took advantage of that and were able to see a lot of different areas of the council, understand the kind of the bones and what it really took to run the council, but from different perspectives, which you don't often get when you're just kind of put into a department first stop. So I've really, really enjoyed it. I was working in public policy at the time, doing a lot of sort of corporate core work, so understanding what it took to run the council, more like on the business side, so internal communications, understanding what different departments there were, and then understanding that it was also a heavily political organisation, and just kind of wrapping my head around that as well was very interesting.
I can imagine. And that's very, very different from somebody studying medical stuff, right? How did you find, I guess, the differences between the two? Because like you said, medical is just kind of like, here's some things that you need to know, go away, practice it, learn it, and then afterwards go do it. But now you're having to like navigate not diseases or things like that, but people. Exactly.
And I was very blessed throughout my biomedical degree that I felt like I knew my strengths quite early on. So when we were doing our dissertations and kind of deciding whether we were going to go heavily into lab work or we were going to explore a little bit more, I decided to go into science communications, which was one of the things I specialized in. So a lot of that was, at the time I didn't realize, but I was working with a couple different partners, organizing and understanding people within the university. And that was kind of the seed of Girls in Science, because I was doing a lot of work with female professors, understanding them. And it was through that process I thought I really enjoy working with people. So going from that and then coming into the council, I feel like I already had that kind of background of being able to organize, those kind of transferable skills. So organize, speak to people well, understand what people's motives were when coming into a meeting or into an environment, and just that kind of emotional intelligence piece, which was really useful to transfer on. And that really helped me.
Yeah. So you're doing the thing at university, and you come back and you start. It was an internship. Remind me again. Yes.
Like a graduate scheme for 2 years.
Scheme. And did Girls in Science start off as a seed at that point, or was it something that you'd always wanted to do, and maybe thought about it but kind of just pushed it back in the back of your mind, or was it something that you thought, oh, I see an opportunity here, maybe I should try and create something for it?
Yeah, so Girls in Science have definitely evolved through the years, and I think there's been a couple different turning points. Coming back to Milton Keynes was one of those, but it originally started while I was at university. I think I was doing like an internship for BBC Look North at the time, and they were talking a little bit about like sort of like young presenters coming in, what do people want to see and hear, and I was talking to one of the producers there, and literally all of a sudden the word Girls in Science dropped into my head. I have no idea where from.
Right, yeah.
And I started like pitching to her this idea of it would be nice to almost have a sort of platform where you're able to understand female professors more, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what I was talking about. But that was probably 2018, 2017.
Right.
And then I kind of left it for a while, did a science communications module where I worked on it a little bit more. But it didn't become a proper thing until I was in my last year of uni in my postgrad course. And that's when the University of York took quite big notice of it, started putting us in front of sponsors, and we did our first events while I was up at York as well.
Right.
So by the time I came back to Milton Keynes, I'd already done like my first couple speaking engagements, wasn't too sure exactly what it was that I was doing.
Yeah.
But we had a blog, we had a group of girls up in Yorkshire, and we were starting to kind of like get the ball rolling. And when I first came back to Milton Keynes, I didn't do anything here. So a lot of my public speaking stuff and joint events was going to London. So we did quite a bit of work with the Ministry of Justice. I was invited in Parliament a couple times, and universities and that sort of thing. But we didn't do any solid, isolated events.
For Girls in Science.
Yeah, for Girls in Science, and definitely not in Milton Keynes for like the first 2 years of being back.
So you started off something at uni, and then afterwards, when you came here, it didn't kind of materialize straight away. What was, I guess, the catalyst for it? And was this around COVID time as well, or?
So literally just before COVID, I'd started doing work in and around London, and I had worked with a couple schools in Milton Keynes, but just kind of like speaking pieces, nothing too much. And then COVID hit. Bearing in mind, before that, I joined the accelerator program at NatWest.
Oh, right, okay.
So I think that was 2019, 18.
Okay.
Which again helped me to form what the ideal would be, even though I wasn't at the point to kind of like roll that out and put that in place, because I was still figuring out what was going on in Milton Keynes.
Right.
And COVID came, did some more kind of like international work, obviously because everything had gone online. So we did some bits with the What's Next Fest that Debbie put me in contact with. And then we started doing like some training pieces actually for nonprofits who wanted to understand what the Gen Z workforce could bring to them, which was really interesting. And that's when I started understanding, there's a huge need for knowledge on both sides of not just the industry itself, but more like the HR and recruitment process of things. And the good thing was at that point we had a community, even though they were kind of not very much in Milton Keynes at that point. They were up in York. We had some girls in Mexico and Dubai and Canada, but I could go to them and ask, what are your ideals when going into a workplace? What are the sort of things that you look for? Right. And that kind of helped us to understand what our demographic wanted, which was what was easy to kind of transfer over to companies in terms of information sharing. Right. And that became a different part of Girls in Science that we're still working on today. But it happened very organically.
Right.
And I don't think I was pushing for it that much. I was just kind of letting opportunities come to me, walking through open doors as much as I could and just seeing what would happen, really.
Sounds awesome, actually.
It's fun.
I mean, it's one of those things that, sometimes if there's a need for it, then you will find that you automatically start to attract the customers, users, or whatever you wish to call it. Obviously, the people that attend the events and so on. So with Girls in Science, first of all, the name. Is it focused specifically at young women, girls, or is it broad enough to be like older women, etc.? And also, is it specifically women? And then also, again, coming back to the science thing. So if you unpick the name,
Yeah, that's fine. So I remember when I was thinking about, I had the idea of girls and science was in my head, but when I was thinking about what does that actually mean, I just thought to myself, I'm a girl who studies science, and that's what I literally went with. I didn't think about the practicalities of it too much when I first started.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like maybe if it was now, I might have rethought some things, but at this point in time,
what would be changing your thoughts now?
I think more inclusive on so many levels. And I think the whole science piece, we have loads of girls that are with us now that are not scientists, don't study science, love STEM, but don't necessarily have that science niche. And I think that's not particularly nice to make them feel excluded. So, but it's nice though, because it always brings up questions. So the people that want to be involved, they ask the questions, and it's about bringing them in and being like, you're absolutely welcome here. And that's the whole thing of what we are as a community. I want everyone to feel welcome. And you've been to some of our events. Although it's literally like maybe 70-80% of women, everyone is invited. And that's something that's very important to me. But it just made sense to me at the time. The thing I love about our name, though, is when I introduce ourselves, people instantly kind of feel like they know what it might be about.
Yeah.
Which is great.
It's got clarity of purpose within the name, right?
Yeah.
So, girls in science, tell me about what a girl who has got a scientific background or wants to do scientific stuff, why would she come to the event, and what are the expectations she has, and what would she get out of it?
Yeah, I think I tried to create the events that I would have wanted to go to when I was in those kind of last years of universities trying to figure things out. It's about coming into a room where you'll meet someone with a friendly face who knows a bit more about the industry than you do, and having those organic conversations. I personally don't know how I feel about the kind of strict mentorship programs that happen. I really feel like if you put a group of people in a room, connections happen organically, and friendships and mentorship and variations of that can happen organically from just facilitating that. And so, there's lots of stories that people have come to our events, and I don't even get to hear everything, where it's like a couple of months later, people have gotten promotions because they met someone who was a leadership coach, and that, do you know what I mean? So it's something that's really important to make sure that, first of all, everyone feels welcome, that they have a nice time, but then also they feel like they can have one or two connections with people and not be so caught up in the sort of stereotypical networking events, which are usually hosted by more mature people who are incredibly professional. And I love that. And there's absolutely a place for that. But I think when you're just starting off and you don't really even know what networking is, it can be a bit scary. And I'm very aware of my position of sort of being a young woman that has a STEM background, seeing the person leading the session to basically be like them. I think it's nice. And I've had a lot of comments and people that have come back to say like I'm the same age as you. I was scared of networking, but you're leading it, so I should be okay.
Yes,
And that's what I want to. That's what I want to do.
All right. So it's something for, I guess, young women to kind of come and gain inspiration from.
Exactly.
And also facilitate, like you said, the connections between potential mentors or mentees, and but not. It's not like a strict kind of thing. It's more like.
Yeah. I don't want you to come and write your name down and fill out a personality quiz and I'll match you instantly to a person, because that doesn't always work. And I think I've created the environments, depending on the experiences that I and some of my team have had in the past, of just making sure people feel comfortable. I think networks are so important though. Job opportunities and just life advice and being able to navigate things fluidly come from having, trusted, almost your own board of advisors. I'd like to think I have my own board of advisors, although I haven't given them any titles, but people I know I can go to for certain things. And everyone is so unique. Everyone has their own circle of people that they can gain inspiration from. And Girls in Science is about adding a couple people to that mix for you that you may not have really thought of before. Right.
And like you said, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And this just makes it a little bit more visible to you.
Exactly.
So great. You're doing this Girls in Science program as well, and you're also at the council as well.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about how, they complement each other. I mean, I would imagine that plenty of the things that you hear from the Girls in Science thing, which is probably open to, well, it's open to the public, basically. You'll get a lot more feedback potentially about, how you do your day-to-day work as well.
Yes, exactly. And my role on the council, I've been there for just over 5 years now, has evolved quite tremendously from when I first started.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I work within the economic development team and we're looking at inward investment for Milton Keynes, it's been really useful to have that knowledge of having a community group myself to understand what the business landscape is here.
Mm-hmm.
I have tech companies that I've been introduced to from the council that have gotten involved in Girls in Science, and vice versa. I have community education groups and tech groups that I have brought in from Girls in Science and now working at the council. So they're quite a fluid exchange, and I'm really grateful for that. There are some really interesting crossovers, but I think it's more about understanding that Milton Keynes is a very exciting place to be at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
There really are a lot of things happening. And I love that I do feel like I'm in the middle of it and I kind of know what's going on. Not all the time, but
yeah.
I do get moments where I overhear conversations and I just ask questions. I'm very curious at work, and I just want to make sure that whether it's strictly for my council programs that I'm working on or for Girls in Science, that I just love connecting people. It's something I really enjoy doing.
Right.
And my position at the council and with Girls in Science gives me a great avenue for that.
Got it. And in terms of the council and so on, right now, are you thinking of how are you thinking that your role is going to develop, or whether it's something that you're thinking that maybe the Girls in Science thing is probably going to become bigger and bigger, and I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I don't know
either.
No, I especially over the past year, Girls in Science could very easily turn into a full-time role, very easily. If I wanted to sleep, it could probably turn into a full-time role. But I'm okay with juggling things at the moment.
Yeah.
I love being busy. I love having lots of things to do. Yeah, Girls in Science is definitely taking a life of its own at the moment. But I love being busy, and I love combining both of my roles.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. I've taken a lot of time to kind of be at peace with not knowing what I'm going to be doing in my career in the next 5 years. And a couple of years ago, that might have really had me shaking in my boots, but not now. I've definitely grown and matured as a person, and I feel very comfortable with kind of just letting things happen. And I'm just really excited to see what's going to happen on both sides. But yeah, Girls in Science is getting very busy.
Good. Tell me about some of the things that, I suppose girls are particularly affected by when it comes to jobs in this particular area as well, in science, or maybe just in generally just girls. I don't know. I'm obviously not one, so I don't know. But maybe some of the things that, women have to, I suppose, deal with because they're obviously different from boys.
Yeah. So at the moment, the stats are saying that about 26.3% of the workforce within STEM categories are women. And that's generally speaking. When you go quite heavily to the science side, it's about 48%. When you go quite heavily to the engineering IT side, it's about 12%. So it's an average of everything. And that's for a number of reasons. I don't think everything is actually known at this point, but the main things that people are saying about lack of transparency for careers, so not really understanding what roles look like can often be a deterrent for young women coming into the workforce. There are those usual, which I think is changing now, but the confidence levels is a huge thing. So what's really interesting about the stats is that when girls do subjects like GCSE, A-level physics, they usually outperform males in terms of stats in their grades, but they don't carry on with the subject. And not everyone knows the reason why, but again, there's a huge issue on perception and not understanding what can I do with this physics degree? What does a job with a physics degree look like? And jobs with physics degrees being categorized as quite masculine in their approach and in what the day-to-day visuals are of that job, which is something that is changing. I think we're doing a lot of work to not just diversify what roles look like, but just bring an understanding of what role looks like. At the end of the day, when you are in STEM, you are a problem solver and you are working with people, and you have to be emotionally intelligent, and you have to understand what the end goal is and work your way there. And it doesn't always involve wearing overalls and going to a platform for an oil rig and then we'll see, which is what some people think of. I would never do something like that, Rob, you know me. So it's about kind of being transparent about that and saying careers in tech, careers in science, in engineering aren't necessarily what you think they are. First of all, you are smart enough, and you can do roles like that. You won't always be the only woman in the room. I think the girls that are coming up now, the numbers are increasing very, very slowly, but it is changing. And even if you are, that's an opportunity for you to be a pioneer, not to be an outcast. And I think it's about communicating that.
Mm-hmm. So those are some of the issues that you're saying is just like a lack of more or enough women within STEM, but you're saying that the top of the funnel is actually getting a little bit bigger because now there's a few more in there, but
there are
not as much
as we want.
Not as parity, basically. Between men and women.
I firmly believe in the numbers. I'm a scientist. If there's 50 to 50% of males versus females in the workforce in general, then it should be like that in most jobs, in my opinion. It just makes sense. And this particular area doesn't make sense. What's really interesting is if you go over to Europe or you go over to parts of Asia, parts of Africa, that's not necessarily the same. The numbers are actually a lot more closer to 50-50, which tells us that in the West, in America, in the UK, it's something to do with that perception piece, about the cultural piece more than it is. Because a lot of my friends in the Asian community and African communities will know that, you know, you're a daughter, it's, you know, doctors, engineers, IT, like it just makes sense. And that has become a bit of a cultural norm. And when you go to those places, you see that. I think, I'm not going to say a particular country because I can't remember, but in parts of Asia, the number of women in engineering and IT is huge. It's huge. And they don't have those problems with numbers. And so that kind of points to us to say, what's our messaging like? What are we doing wrong in terms of, is it the teaching style? Is it the images that we're using? But overall, what's the messaging saying about these issues, and how can we change that to push and nudge the cultural norm into a direction that makes more logistical sense for the 50-50 figure that we're looking for?
Right. So you definitely think there's more of a social and a cultural
element? I think it's social, cultural, and that's what we're trying to do. But again, it has to be, I firmly believe in the home being the primary learning place for any young person. Primary schools, which we don't do work in primary schools at the moment, but that is a huge place because that's where people are shaping their minds, understanding what their careers could be like necessarily. And some of the times where we come to the point where they're kind of leaving university, sometimes it is too late because they've already shaped what they want to do, and they may have a degree in mathematics, but they want to go into fashion, and that's fine, but their decision has already been made. So it's about tackling that earlier, and just trying to create that nudge and that steer and that perception earlier on, which is what we're moving towards at Girls in Science.
Right. Also, do you think, I've just been thinking about this actually as you were speaking then, because of the social and the cultural aspect of it, so effectively like the people that you grew up with or around are kind of like saying to you, well, you know, they're not directly telling you, but it's being said subliminally that, you know, it's not really something for you, kind of speaking. But then there's also the economic dimension, which is different overseas because there's just, you just got to go to work kind of thing, and you know, the kind of systems which are in place to support people aren't necessarily there, so everybody has to kind of like literally get a job, right? Whereas over here there's a lot of what's the word, there's a lot more things which have enabled a different kind of state to form. And I don't mean what I'm trying to say is that overseas, and I know this just from a cultural perspective, my own anyway, is that if you've got 5 people in the family, then 5 people got to find a job and make sure that they contribute to the household. Whereas before, over here, I think there might have been some families which didn't necessarily have to have that. Dad was the main breadwinner, let him carry on kind of thing.
There's a lot of cultural benefits in other places than we have in England. One of them being childcare. So in England, families are less likely to live together in terms of generational living. And that means that there's a lot more pressure on women for childcare and looking after the home than there is in other parts where their generational living is more common. That's one of the things that comes up quite a bit with childcare. Women are often, even though other countries may be more traditional in their kind of cultural sense of women must take care of the children sort of thing, but having that social construct where you have families and members and family friends living together in close communities takes off that pressure. Even if it isn't generational living, we have an auntie across the road, or we have someone that's close by that can look after the kids.
Is that generational thing happening only for one generation though? Because presumably once the women who are in work end up working until they're like 60, 70, then they're not going to be there available to go take care of it.
Exactly, those are the numbers that we're seeing now. So we don't know if in the next 20 years it's going to completely shift. I know you're completely right. I think it also has something to do with the levels of demand. So here, and this is very stereotypically saying, so
that's fine. Because we can't really talk about nuance too much when there's just generalizations. So just from the numbers and just from what is generally happening at the moment, people study subjects that they like, that they're interested in, that make sense to them, that they can visualize. And in other parts of the world, people study subjects where there is demand, where they know they're going to get a job, where they know the industry is growing, and that's what they want to do, and that's where they want to go. Because it's job security, and job security is a lot more important in some countries than it is in others, because there's less of a cushion, and that makes perfect sense to me. And it's about understanding that with different social norms, you'll have completely different social patterns, one of which will be whether the woman is able to go to work or not. And I'm not saying every woman should go to work. I think being a housewife is probably harder than all of the jobs you could think about. Absolutely.
So it's not about that. It's just I believe in educating women to have the right to choose if they want to go to work or not. And obviously I'm not in that position myself. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I know that in the future that might be a decision that I have to make because I see the numbers, and I'm very fortunate to be able to speak to people that are further into their career than I am at this point in time, and I understand what some of the challenges are, but it's such a shame that people feel like they have to let the ball drop in one area to be successful in the other, and it's very sad.
It is true. I mean, there's, I know that there's plenty of books out there that says that you can have it all, but I'm
not sure you can have it
really
all at once.
All at the same time.
At the same time,
And I don't think that happens even from I don't think that happens for most men as well, because there's always the thing that they, at least I can talk about myself now, right? Aspirationally, there's plenty of things that I would like to do, but also because I have a family as well, I do think that there's
a trade-off.
There is a trade-off, especially when you do have a family. I'm not saying that I have more or less of an attachment than my wife does, but at the end of the day, I've got to get back home because I've got to be there. I want to be there.
Exactly.
Let me rephrase that. It's not that I got to be there. I want to be back home and put him to bed or do the other things, because otherwise, what's the point of having a family?
Absolutely.
But I do understand that, like a generation before me, people would have been, usually the men would have been working and I'm talking about maybe upper middle class now, they would have been wealthy enough to then be able to say, okay, to the wife, well, she doesn't need to work, but they would have enough like help. They would hire in people, or they would, send their kids to boarding school and that type of thing,
Exactly.
which means that the actual parenting that kind of takes place is but we live in different times.
Exactly. And like you even say, even with the labour laws in other countries, it's a lot easier to get people to help you in the house in other countries than it is in England. And I don't know if you have any, friends or family that have maids. I don't. Have full-time maids that live with them.
Who have cleaners and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
They come
That's
in,
common.
But yeah, like
but full in, leaving maids, nannies. I think my mum may have one or two friends that it doesn't happen, and it's harder to support a family with the same energy and the same effort than you would in other places where it's easier to have that help at home, whether it's from family or people that you hire to help you.
Yeah. It's really weird. When I was growing up, we had maids and people like that.
My mum did,
and, we had a driver, and a chauffeur.
Yes.
And I was, and then my dad died, and then everything tanked, and we quickly started running out of money, and then because you had so much family living in the house, inheritance just got sucked up and just kind of completely,
No, similar with my mum. Similar with my mum. She's one of 10 siblings. They had the whole 9 yards, the house and the maids and the drivers. Her dad also died. A long family history, but especially when you have big families and there's lots of people to support, it gets complicated, and you just have to do the best that you can. But it's a big challenge, but it often raises some pretty strong, incredible people. Situations like that. So.
After at least after my dad had passed away, everybody used to come up to me and say to me, "Oh, you need to be the man of the house now."
How old?
I was 11 at the time.
Oh gosh, wow.
Yeah. And he was a doctor as well, so he was a medical professor and surgeon, and he's really well connected in Guyana, because it's only a small country in terms of population size. But it was very, very strange looking back at it now. Back then I just thought, he's dead, the money's going to be there, and I didn't even think about the money.
You're 11 though, that's very young.
You kind of get accustomed to a certain way of living,
and
then all of a sudden you start to see things gradually, actually rapidly, kind of disappearing, some of the things that you used to do. Having to go from being not having a care in the world to then definitely thinking about where everything else is going to come from and so on. So I understand like the disparity between being rich and being very, very poor. And actually that definitely gives me a good understanding of how people work and behave very differently when they're in different sets of circumstances.
Absolutely. I love that lesson though in life, even though it's usually a very painful experience to go through. There is nothing like having a trial that you go through that shows you who the people in your life really are. I've had that over the past 5 years, and it's invaluable. Like, you just think about practical things, like the people I would invite to my birthday 5 years ago might have been like 70. It's not like that anymore. I really value that. I think at the time it's very painful, but it's important, because sometimes people walk blindly through life and everything's good, and they think they have people around them that they can always trust in and always be there to support them, and it's just not the case. And I'd rather know than not.
No, I definitely get that. The friend in need is a friend indeed.
Absolutely.
Type thing. Which reminds me, I need to give my mate a ring as well. No, I should.
I should probably call my real friends.
I should call my real mates.
And the worst thing is, they don't always live very close to you. The people that the hearts are connected aren't always very close.
Yeah. So where are most of your mates now? Are they still up?
Oh my gosh, they're everywhere.
Like all over
they're
the place?
everywhere. Some of my best friends are in America, and I have a lot of friends in the UK, which I'm very grateful for. And that's the interesting thing. I think being an only child, also you are forced to extend your circle. Like you don't, and it's only something that I'm realizing now, because I loved being the only child growing up. I still love it because there's a lot of benefits.
Yeah.
But the you don't have someone the same age as you or in the same that's grown up with your exact same life experiences. It's going to be there no matter what. Like, you don't always have that guarantee. It forces you to look outside of yourself a bit more and kind of be like, okay, like who can I actually count on? Which can be quite scary, I think.
Yeah. Because I could imagine an only child, and I was an only child for a period of time as well. See, before my brother came along, and I can imagine.
You like happy days.
yeah, because you kind of get everything from your parents, at least anyway, right? And the focus and attention is on you, but then you get into, I suppose, the world of work, and then afterwards, your parents aren't the people that are providing or you're trying to get something from. So now you have to think and invent clever and creative ways of getting what you want without kind of going, oh, well, just where is it, right? You have to be able to learn how to influence.
Exactly. And I think I've definitely learned what I think I'm becoming a better friend, because I've kind of put myself out there in terms of being able to not just like, I think you have to be in the right place at the right time. I'd be very happy to go out and be like, hugs for sale, come.
Yeah.
But I'm very, very happy with the close circle of people that I have now. I feel like I know who I can go to for what, and I'm very open, and I know that my friends can come to me when they need me. And there's also that thing of having a friend that you don't have to ever have your guard on, or you don't have to diminish what you're doing to be like, are they going to be okay with me talking about like all the stuff that's happening? Like people that are genuinely happy for you and you're genuinely happy for them equally. It's very rare, but it's really special when it happens. I think it's really important.
No, you got to keep those people definitely
super close.
Super close, which again reminds me I need to call them up. So tell me, what do you do so what do you want Girls in Science to turn into? Let's say in the next let's say a year to 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? Not like super far out.
Yeah. We decided late last year.
When you say we as well, have you got like a committee of people who...
So yes. So I would have an official sort of board of advisors for that. I have people that are more on the educational side. I have some younger Gen Zs that help me with just keeping up with what's happening in the Gen Z and
Gen A's.
I'm all for that mindset.
Yeah.
But then also kind of unofficial mentors or people that are in the business. And I was looking at the landscape and tech landscape of Milton Keynes and understanding, what do I spread our wings and carry on doing our national events like we usually do, or do I try to really focus on Milton Keynes? And late last year we decided let's really try and focus in on what is happening in Milton Keynes. So that's when we started doing our first couple of events, November last year and earlier on this year. I'd really love for Girls in Science to be the place that if there's anyone that's in secondary school that is thinking of going into STEM, they've heard about Girls in Science, they can come to one of our events, meet up with people. And I do this actually.
So you want a lot younger girls to come?
I'd love for, ideally it would be younger girls in terms of that influence piece, like we mentioned earlier on. But in terms of practicality and sort of the decision-making process of university and the UCAS points and GCSEs and stuff, there is definitely, that's where we specialise in, that's where we focus on. We've done this before, of connecting young women to universities or people at universities to help them with their application processes and put them like on that straight and narrow to feel like they're supported through that whole very stressful time. Right. So kind of the GCSEs, so 16 to 18 years plus. And then of course girls in early careers. And again, matching them to women in industry in Milton Keynes. But we're doing a lot of work right now to connect to those schools. And actually engage with them on a very kind of personal level. So one of the big things that we're doing next year, I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but we're announcing it soon anyway. So in February next year, we're doing our first Girls in Science conference with Santander, where we're going to be having about 300 students at Unity Place. And we have some really exciting speakers and sessions and workshops coming up for them for a very short period of time. But I'm very conscious that an event once a year is great, but it's about what they take from that and the kind of follow up with the afterthought after that. So after that, our intentions are to really connect quite deeply with schools, be doing events more regularly, but maybe internal, so that the students there can get to know us. And we have a great network of girls in Milton Keynes that are all super pumped to be a part of that team, and really inspire on a very practical level. So I'd love for young women in Milton Keynes to know about Girls in Science as a place that they can go to for help and for inspiration, and for knowledge on what they can do with their next steps, and also what Milton Keynes and the close surrounding areas have to offer for their careers.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, more for the alpha ambitious.
No,
girl.
very, very, very good. So yeah, I was going to say, to set something up like this, you do have to be ambitious, right? And you have to really go for it. What kind of drives you then?
Oh my gosh. I feel like in my life I've had a lot of people who have inputted into me, and I just want them to have a good return on investment, if I'm being completely honest. Yeah. So my mum is my superhero in every stretch of the imagination, and she's always been super keen on my education and doing the best that I can do. And I feel like when you've had so many people give you good advice, and you've had such knowledge poured into you for a number of years, you have to do something with it. To whom much is given, much is expected. And sometimes that is a bit of like pressure within myself, but I think it's good pressure, because if you don't push yourself, you're not going to do anything. Human nature is to just take things easy and take things slow, maybe survival mode, but not, it's not everyday survival mode. It's weird, I wouldn't have called myself ambitious in the past, but I do think I have those qualities. I think I'm ambitious to make a difference, to inspire people, not necessarily through myself, but through the work that I do, or the things that I put out there into the community. I think that's really important to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, my mom's just been a very, very hard worker all of her life, and I try to replicate that.
Yeah. It's very good. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of girls looking at you anyway, and you're like, I'd love to do what she's doing.
Yeah, people don't think I work, which is really I get this all the time on Instagram. It's like, you're always like doing stuff, but I don't quite get it. And it's like, there's a lot of hard work that goes on in the background, a lot of nights that you don't post, about. I don't sleep very well.
Oh, really?
Not in the bad way. I mean, once I hit the bed, I'm gone, but it's like, I will work all evening, all night, just to get things done. If it needs to get done, you need to do it.
Well, yeah, that's really important, I think, as well, just to let people know that it just doesn't come just like that. We did a podcast recently with Nikki Perfect, and she said the same thing. Like, she goes, I look like a swan at the top, but underneath I'm just going like that. Yeah, completely. Right, so Girls in Science and stuff going on there. What about, like, what do you do for relaxation? What's your chill thing?
So I've been playing classical piano from like age 8. I love playing the piano. That is definitely one of the things I do, that just, because you can't think about everything else when you're like tapping on keys, like you're just focusing on the music. That's something I really enjoy. I gym quite a bit. I love horses. I don't like the cold, but I do like being out in the countryside sometimes. And I like to travel a lot as well. That's really fun.
Very good.
Yeah.
So horses, travel,
piano and music is everything to me.
Sounds like you're a bit of a polymath, to be honest. Yeah. Like you do
lots of different things.
Yeah, lots and lots of different. Because that's what they said. Like Einstein, for example, he was really like an accomplished. Well, it was a fiddle, but the same thing as a fiddle violinist.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, and he used to love doing that.
Yeah.
And he did also kind of plenty of outreach things as well. So maybe there's some things there like that.
I do. No, music is my muse. Like, if I have a stressful day, it's my outlet. If I need some like energy to just like get on with stuff, it's that. But I'm like, I listen to all kinds of music. It's terrible, like literally everything.
Tell me what's on your playlist.
On my
And like the most weirdest and eclectic things that you've got.
And that's so funny. So I sent my playlist over to a friend one time who was asking, what do you listen to? And he was like, this is very eclectic mix. I listen to K-pop, I listen to jazz, I listen to like Southern gospel music, like family groups that sing together. I listen to classical music, and
Give me some pieces that you like.
I can't, can I get my phone?
Yeah, you can get your phone out. Yeah. Go on.
No, okay. And the funny thing is, so I have different playlists for like
different moods?
Yeah.
Or like, yeah.
So I have a friend, she's like, I only listen to albums. Like and I'm like, how?
Do people even do that? Like,
no one does that.
Who are these weird people?
Yeah, I have different playlists for different moods, as I'm sure the majority of the population do.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I made one recently. Okay, so I listen to Ella Fitzgerald quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. Like, why? Or what's in your head when you're listening to Ella?
I guess I'm just like a bit of a rose-tinted romantic at heart. Like, I just love like the visuals of New York in like, I don't know, the 1990s and jazz clubs. And
yeah, very good.
Really, I don't know. Frank Sinatra. I have a couple musicals on here. So The Prince of Egypt.
I love The Prince of Egypt.
I love The Prince of Egypt. I have that on my playlist.
I've got Prince of Egypt on there as well because I like soundtrack music.
Yes, I love soundtrack music. Alan Silvestri, who did like The Parent Trap, Father of the Bride.
Right.
Yeah, like all his stuff is just dreamy.
I love Horner, Zimmer, obviously, but I particularly like things which have got like a string instrument or like a reed instrument in there. Yeah. I don't know why, and it just speaks to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know. I completely get that. Tomorrow and Together. So that's K-pop.
Mm-hmm. Which. Or is that the artist?
Tomorrow Together. Like that's what they're called.
Oh, that's what they're called. All right, okay.
Group.
I don't know anything about K-pop.
No, it's fine. I love K-pop.
My dad's South Korean, by the way, and I know nothing about it.
I have a cousin that lives in South Korea, and I'm like, what's going on over there? A lot of Ella Fitzgerald, actually. This is the
you got
current.
A load of Ella.
I do. Jonathan McReynolds, who's a Christian artist.
Right.
And I have some Celtic music on there.
Get you. That's some very weird stuff going on there.
I know, literally, I'm going through it.
Mixes.
The Bellas, that's like a cappella group from this movie soundtrack.
All right, okay.
Debbie Reynolds, who's, again, 1950 singer. So, and I love Afrobeats. That's more like my need to get into the mood to like just get something done, workout stuff.
Yeah. Which artists?
Okay, I have P Square on there.
Right.
Davido, I think that's how you say his name. And then I listen to a lot of like Latina music as well.
Very good.
Everything.
That's like a mad mixed continent. I'm surprised you haven't got any Aboriginal music in there or something.
Honestly, I just need to add it in. Like that's the only thing missing from my playlist. Everything is... Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. No, I love that. I love the case as well. That's
Thank
really...
you. A friend got it for me.
That's very, very, very stylish. Golden green.
Green. I do like my greens. Although it's not my favourite colour. I do like green.
Yeah.
It just works.
All right. So I know what you do for like relaxation and all the stuff that you've been interested in. In terms of you mentioned Christianity a couple of times.
Yeah.
Tell me about like your beliefs and and how, whether it was something you found or whether it was something that you were brought up with, or how did...
So I would definitely say it's a mixture of both. So my mum is like the Christian woman. Like if I need to know what God is thinking, I'll be like, hey mum, what's been on your heart recently? But I think as with anything, you get to a point where you have to make the decision for yourself. We don't live in a world where you can just follow things just because it seems right. Like it has to be something that's personal, especially something like following Jesus or being a Christian that is really influences every part of your life. So the way I do my work and the way I interact with people and what I think and what I watch and what I do, like it's all influenced. I think the best way I describe it is some people like think of their lives as a tree and like their faith or Christianity in my case is a branch of that. For me, like Christianity is the tree, and everything that I do kind of branches off of that. So it's like the foundation of me, it's the core of me. I've been going to church all my life, but again, when you go to university and you kind of try to figure things out yourself, I came to a point where I really, took it on as my own way of living. And for me, it just provides a huge sense of peace. I know, no matter what, hopefully not get run over by a bus tomorrow. I don't know how people kind of go through life without knowing that this could all be for nothing. Like, that just really scares me. I kind of feel like it's my, some people call it their like seatbelt insurance, in the sense of like, if you don't wear your seatbelt, the possible aftermath would be a lot worse than if you did wear it, in that sense. Of, people take out life insurance, but they don't often think about their eternity. And I think that's the whole thing for me. I'm very conscious about deeply thinking about my life consistently. I always think about like, what is my purpose? What am I here for? And I try to live my life from like almost, it sounds quite morbid, but I think it has to be done. Like from the perspective of my deathbed, like when people are lying down and they're about to go, like what do they actually think about? It's not that I should put more hours in at the gym, or like, I should have spent more time at work. Like that's not what people think about. They think, okay, what's happening next? Did I spend time with my family? Did I love well? And like, will anyone remember me? That kind of thing. And that's kind of where I sit in my headspace.
With it.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's really admirable. And I think also having it as a basis of, having, I don't want to say like an identity or whatever, but the thing that drives you.
I would say it's my identity. I think you're right. Yeah, I would say it's my identity. I don't think, there's been times in my life where I have felt far from God, and I haven't felt like I'm as close to God as I wanted to be. And they've been the saddest times of my life. So, I know I'm happiest when I'm closest to God, and when I feel like, not necessarily I'm doing all the right things. That's not what Christianity is about. It's about being open and honest.
How do you get that sense of feeling close to God?
It's when I'm transparent, and even if I'm not in my best space, or I'm not doing everything that is recommended by scriptures, it's not about being good. It's about being open and being like, I'm struggling with this. And I feel like as I've progressed in my understanding of what the Bible actually is by reading it, I feel like it's influenced a lot of my work and my friendships, because you get closer and more intimate with people by sharing those vulnerable parts of yourself, and not always being perfect and not always having things together.
That's true, actually. I mean, I know a little bit about the Bible because I went to church and so on when I was a kid growing up. But there are lots of stories which
lots
are parables,
and
lots of messed up people.
Messed up people.
And lots of things which happen. But and there wasn't anybody there that was perfect, right?
Exactly. Only one person in the Bible was perfect. Everyone else, and there's hundreds of them, all had flaws. Some of them you think, why are their names even mentioned in here? They're pretty terrible people. And it's not that they all had good connections with God. Some of the stuff is historical, but it's like God doesn't call perfect people. He just calls honest people. And that's really all that he wants. And once you kind of see your life like that, it just takes so much pressure off. And it's just a nice way to live, to know that, I'm God's got my back. I'm on his side. But he knows everything about me, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's a very peaceful way to live. I appreciate that a lot.
It's good, because mentally at least you have someone that entity, greater being to talk to. Right? Whether that's through prayer or whether that's through just thoughts.
Exactly.
I get it. Okay. So tell me, what are your plans for the weekend? What are you up to and stuff like that?
Let me see this weekend. I think I might be going to a pumpkin patch with a friend. I don't know. I don't celebrate Halloween, but I want to do some autumny things.
Yeah.
I'm slowly but surely trying to accept the weather is getting colder, although I hate it, Rob.
Oh, yeah. So actually, I mean, what I didn't even cover was things like, science and sustainability and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
What do you think's happening nowadays? And surely we need a lot more people studying all the sciences to help.
No,
with.
100%. I think the general population, it's it's getting global warming and stuff. Surely it should be getting warmer. And it's no, it just means there's very extreme weather patterns on both ends.
Yeah.
So our summers will be hotter, our winters will be colder. And it's definitely worth looking into and studying. No one really knows the pace at which these things are going to go, but we're definitely seeing the effects. And it's a shame. I think, again, it's because humans have just lived on the planet and just thought they could do whatever they wanted to do without any consequences and haven't really taken the time to think about things. Mm-hmm. And it's the human thing to do. We're all super busy. We just want to do what we can quickly and get on with it.
It's kind of out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind.
But now it's actually happening.
Yeah, and that's just the everyday human experience of, just living your life and not really thinking too much about things. But I think if humans were more thoughtful and more slow to take action, we wouldn't be experiencing this.
Yeah.
But, lots of other things too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I suppose the last thing I got to talk to you about is what do you, in terms of science and so on, what do you think, without saying it, or you can go into it even more, what's happening with all of this artificial intelligence stuff that keeps cropping up, especially science, right? So
yeah. So I mean, I'm definitely not an expert on the subject, and I'm learning about it as I go along. Obviously, it's a huge industry that's booming at the moment. Everyone's talking about it, even in terms of the council and what we're doing there. It's definitely on our minds. Of course, we have the AI Summit coming up, which is a huge, literally international event that's happening right here in Milton Keynes at Bletchley Park. So it's definitely on our radar. I think the concerns some people have are just, as you know, is in terms of the regulations. So I think the technology is moving faster than we're able to understand and regulate it. Mm-hmm. And also, with anything of this space, if it gets into the wrong hands, it can potentially be bad. But I don't think it's anything to panic about at the moment. I'm a firm believer in let's not cross that bridge until we get there. Let's try and prevent it from happening. But if it's happening already, let's just do our best to keep up with it. I'm not a tech probe in that sense. I think it can be used for some really great things. Everything from medicine to diagnosis, operations. I think it could be really useful and hopefully potentially in the future take some pressure off the NHS, which are all working incredibly hard. But I guess we'll see. But I think there's a lot of stuff happening in the background in terms of working with the ethics and the regulations of things and trying to make sure that we keep up with that, because it's not as fast as, again, the technology is advancing.
Got it. So, and can girls, when they come to you at Girls in Science, find out a little bit more about?
Oh my gosh, 100%. But again, because I'm not the expert, as a connector, as a professional connector, I definitely know people who are working on this quite tightly in the industry. And I think that's one of the great things about working with and knowing so many different people is when you have people that come to you to ask questions and you don't know, which I'm very honest, if I don't know, I'll just be you should probably speak to
somebody who's
someone.
It's their day job kind of thing.
Exactly. I don't believe in speaking about things you don't know too much about.
No, that's fine. And this is probably going to be my last question, which is how do you reach the younger generation, the Gen A's? Because like you said, those are the people who are going to be coming up right now, from, I don't know, the ones who were born into the iPad age, right? Or have not known anything else, and that's the norm, the internet and mobile access to whatever is the norm. Yeah,
I think it's an exciting time for them in particular because technology won't necessarily feel like something foreign. It's a part of their blood and they've grown up with it. But I think as with all generations, it's going to have to be about listening to them and what they want, but then also finding that kind of mutual perspective from both sides. So a lot of the Gen A's are still in school, obviously, at the moment and still studying. The funny thing is, Gen Zs are going to be thinking Gen Zs are old and doing things differently very soon.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be I'm going to be put in the old category very, very soon, which I feel like I would fit into the old category quite well. My love of Ella Fitzgerald, seamlessly.
You're halfway there.
I'm literally inside. I'm already there.
Yeah.
But I think, again, if people from different generations, different backgrounds listen to each other, find that common ground, I think that would just make everything a lot easier, a lot more seamless.
So a lot more listening and a lot more, I guess, mutual respect.
Respect, but you have to have spaces where people are constantly listening to each other. And that's what I try to do with Girls in Science. So when you come to our events, it's not, everyone that's been in their career 15 years, 20 years on one side of the room and everyone that's just starting on the other side. It is about that intermingling, and it has to happen that way. And that's the only way people gain good perspectives, is by literally being in fun and having conversations with people and forcing that sometimes.
Yeah.
Because everyone at the end of the day really just wants the same thing.
Yeah.
But people see it differently, and it's about kind of finding that common ground, which is super important.
Got it. Cool. So thank you very much, Lakeisha, for coming. And if you're interested in finding out a lot more about Girls in Science, please head to their website and you can find out all the information here. It's all available in the description. And thank you very much for joining us for this episode, and we hope to see you soon. Bye.